ones fighting now for their health, for their lives in hospital. Absolutely disgraceful scenes that we have seen on the streets of Britain. There are so many questions to be asked. We'll try and work our way through them all. Alongside me over the next hour, I'll have a variety of guests, but also my panel tonight. I've got the head of comms at Popular Conservatism, Annunciata Rees-Mogg, and I've got the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Good evening to both of you. It's really important to me as well, ladies and gents at home, that you share this conversation with me tonight over the next hour. I mean, I'm not even sure that we can try and get our heads around it, but I want to try and address some of the key questions that many of you will have. I want to try and understand the sentiments that many of you are feeling at home as well. So you can join the conversation in all the usual ways. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay. Of course, you can get in touch with me on Twitter or X as well, at GBNews or at Michelle Dewbs. Without further ado, let's take you live then to the scene of this terror attack. Our GB News reporter, Anna Riley, joins us live there now. Anna, good evening to you. Bring my viewers up to speed with the goings-on, if you would.
Good evening, Michelle. Will you join us here at one of the cordons near Heaton Park Synagogue? Police activity still in full swing here. You may be able to just see behind us witness statements still being taken at the other end of the cordon, scientific work going on so far, and the world's media here as well, media from all across the world coming to cover this horrific incident that happened today. It unfolded around 9:30 this morning when a man who was killed by police at the scene arrived at the synagogue, ploughing his car into the crowd and stabbing people as well. We know that 2 people have died, 4 people are still in hospital. There's been arrests made as well by 2 people on a nearby street here. Those 4 patients are from the Jewish community that are in hospital at the moment. They're in hospital with a variety of serious injuries after what happened. We know that the attacker was shot dead by police within 7 minutes of the first 999 call being made. Greater Manchester Police officers declared Plato a code meaning marauding terror attacks, and a major incident shortly after that Plato has been stood down. It's now been understood that the attacker, who was wearing a belt around him that could have potentially carried bombs, that those bombs were not viable, but at the time that was not known. We still don't know the name of the suspect as yet. That has not been released, but police have given 2 press conferences today, one here in Manchester and also one in London as well, keeping the public up to speed. But of course, as well as attending those press conferences, I've been speaking to people here on the ground, members of the Jewish community. One man in particular that was evacuated from the flats nearby, who said that he saw blood on the robes of the rabbi that was conducting the service, and also a couple who were frightful of family members being attacked at the synagogue. This is what they told me.
Very, very nervous at the moment, and they feel very vulnerable, as we do. Especially as with the Jewish schools, the synagogues. It's a big Jewish community here.
And I don't understand why, because we just want to live and let live.
Been unfortunately many times in war zone countries, so unfortunately I do know the sound of shots. So when I heard that, I said, that sounds like shots. And then a couple of minutes later I heard multiple sirens and then helicopters, etc. I realised something was going on. Police wouldn't even allow us out of our flats. And later on, police came and evacuated us from our flat. As I was walking down the road, I did see the rabbi of the synagogue, Rabbi Walker, and now it's a day of prayer. So when we pray with a long white robe, and I saw at the bottom of his robe there was blood on it. Prime Minister Keir Starmer said that he'll sort out more armed police for synagogue. And I'm saying straight out to him, straight out, Prime Minister Keir Starmer, we don't need more armed police. What we need is projects of dialogue. of people understanding each other's faiths from different areas, from different aspects.
This horrific incident happening on the holiest of days for the Jewish community, Yom Kippur. It officially ends at 7:23 p.m. today. Religious Jews during this day refrain from using electronic devices on the holy day, and that means that many of them will not have heard about this morning's attack in Manchester until they reconnect with the devices at that time. So the Together Coalition is urging people to share messages of unity with Jewish people as Yom Kippur ends this evening. We've also heard, obviously, from the royal family. We've heard from the Prime Minister. Also, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also has said that his country grieves with the Jewish community in the UK after this morning's barbaric terror attack in Manchester.
Riley, thank you very much for bringing us up to speed. Also, as well, if you were listening to that, you was probably wondering what all that background noise. I mean, there's such a hive of activity taking place in that location, as of course you would expect. And as Anna was also explaining there, you've seen not one but two arrests taking place throughout the day. I mean, so many of you are joining the conversation already. Of course, there's a huge outpouring of love and sentiment and regard to everybody that's been injured. There's lots of people getting in touch saying that they want to express solidarity with the Jewish community. One of my viewers as well has just got in touch and said, Michelle, I'm not Jewish, but I'm also terrified about attacks taking place on the streets of Britain. I can hear you there now. Let me cross live to a local journalist, Adam Callier. Good evening to you, Adam. Thank you very much for joining us. This horrendous terror attack took place this morning in Crumpsall in Manchester. This is a place that many of my viewers will perhaps not be familiar with as a location. Would you mind just starting, therefore, just talking to my viewers? What's it like? Talk to me about your local community, if you would.
Yeah, sure. It's a very close-knit community. We all know each other. I used to work at the Jewish Telegraph for several years, and you get to know pretty much everyone in the community when you do a stint at that newspaper. The shuls, the synagogues, the Jewish schools, you know, everything is within walking distance from each other. And then just across the road, essentially, you've got the Muslim community, and there's also a Ukrainian church. Like, everything is all there. Everyone gets on. And the Jewish community, we just go about our day. We don't bother anyone. You know, pretty much like everywhere else in the UK, to be fair, we are just there, and most people don't really know that we're there.
Today, I mean, Yom Kippur is a hugely significant day for the Jewish community. Many more people than normal, of course, would be attending their synagogue. Just again, for members of my audience that are not Jewish, just help them understand the significance of today for your community.
So whether you are the most religious person or you're not, I mean, I'm not super religious, but everybody does something on Yom Kippur. It's that one day where you do something to mark it, whether you're religious or not. It's the holiest day of the year. You don't work, you fast if you can. You spend all day pretty much from 6:30 p.m. the night before to in about an hour's time praying non-stop pretty much all day, and you fast, and it's to think about, you know, everything you've done throughout the year, to atone for any sins, and to just wish for a better year ahead. It is the single most important day of the Jewish calendar, bar none.
And then, of course, we all know the horror that unfolded outside the synagogue this morning. Talk me through your reaction to that and how this has been impacting the local community that you've just described so well.
I was actually about 5 minutes walk away around the corner when it happened, which is kind of sobering, really. Within minutes, you're getting messages from everybody, because as I say, everybody knows each other. You're getting messages going, are you okay? Do you know this person? This person's been injured. Or, as happens in these kind of things, a lot of it was, you know, names flying around or whatever, but people were just checking in on each other within minutes. One thing about Yom Kippur, I mean, it's the same as a Shabbos. You don't use your phone, you don't use technology, but when something like this happens, Everybody seems to have broken Yom Kippur today because some things are more important. You know, people were checking in on each other. Whether you go to Heaton Park Synagogue or not, you will know somebody who was there. Some of my mum's friends were about to leave to go to that shul, and they didn't. Once they heard what happened, obviously, I was somewhere else, and I said, "Oh God, this has happened," and someone was behind me and went, "Oh, I know somebody who's there right now." So the whole community, wider community, non-Jewish and whatever, everybody's been impacted by this. It's something that you don't think happens on your doorstep. And we use the phrase, you know, the stuff that goes on in Israel, stuff that goes on in other countries, terrorist attacks, you kind of say, oh, that's a bit close to home. This is literally around the corner. It couldn't get closer to home than this. And my daughter's school is literally around the corner from the shul, and parents are now anxiously waiting to find out if there's even going to be a school day tomorrow, because they're supposed to be at school. And I kind of hope there isn't, really, but we'll see.
So if there is a school day, you mentioned you've got a young daughter, would you send her in to school? And talk to me about how safe you feel. You've just heard our Prime Minister talking about, you know, there's no room for hatred on the streets, and he's going to up the ante when it comes to security, and he wants the Jewish community and everybody else to feel safe. And that's all well and good, standing in a studio talking like that down to a camera. But, you know, in the real world, you're a Jewish man with a little girl. How will you feel? How will you decide whether or not to let her out of your sight and go to school?
There's a two-part answer to this, and one part is probably not broadcastable, so I'll make it a little bit more PG. I'm not interested in the platitudes of Keir Starmer and people like Andy Burnham and Sadiq Khan, who have essentially thrown British Jews under a bus for the last 2 years by allowing hate marches to go ahead in every major city. So I'm really not interested in what they've got to say. But in terms of the safety, look, it's been said a few times on many channels today that Jewish buildings, Jewish community centres, etc., have all got extremely high levels of security. The school that my daughter's at has got security guards, 2 at the front, 2 at the back. They're all wearing stab-proof vests. There's like 10-foot high barriers that you couldn't get a tank through, cameras on every possible spot. So in terms of her being at school, I feel she'd be fine. But it's just one of those things where, I mean, I wrote about it 2 years ago after October the 7th. There is this collective trauma of this has happened, and can we all get about with our day? And it's happened again. And there's going to be a very awkward and eerie feeling when we all drop our kids off at school tomorrow. And after October the 7th, there was even police cars stationed at every possible entry point of the school. And I have a feeling that when we drop our kid off tomorrow at school, we're going to be greeted by police cars, which nobody should have to explain to their child why there's a police car at the school gate. But that's been a common theme in the UK for not just the past 2 years, not even taking the low-hanging fruit of going all the Corbyn years. When I was at school 20-odd years ago, you've got security guards. This country's always had issues with its Jewish community, and we've always needed far more security than anybody really ever should have.
I actually, as a fellow parent, I find it so sad that you're almost resigned, your little girl, almost resigned to the fact that there is security when you go to school, and that is actually required, and it's become a normal part of life. How absolutely heartbreaking must that be to live in that way for those children to have to experience that. For now, thank you very much for giving us your insight and your reaction. I wish you and your whole community well. Thank you very much. Thanks. Oh, I find that heartbreaking. Let's bring this up a level and look. Let me just get your initial reaction, Aaron Bastani, to what's unfolded today.
I thought you did an excellent job at bringing out the human angle when you were speaking to Adam just a moment ago. As a person with a daughter, do you feel safe? Do you feel sort of happy and content with regards to your daughter's safety? I think that's a really, really important way of looking at it. I'd also like to just draw attention to the rapidity of the response by emergency services. Really extraordinary. 9:31, Greater Manchester Police receive a report. Within 7 minutes, shots have been fired. I mean, that is absolutely incredible. A lot of the time in the media, we criticise state services, rightly or wrongly, sometimes justified, sometimes not. That is the gold standard. I am so proud of those people for keeping a huge number of people safe. And then 3 minutes later, paramedics arrive. I am so proud of that response, that within 10 minutes, this monster was pacified and those injured people, who, thank God, are still alive, received treatment. So, I mean, those are the two things for me which are just... I mean, that's a miracle, that speed of response. I'd also add, though, given it took 7 minutes, one suspects there was intelligence with regards to a potential attack somewhere. Because
that's what I was about to say. One of the reasons that I imagined that a response was, or perhaps might have been, so prompt is because people would have been on heightened alert. This is a hugely significant holiday for this community. We all know the kind of temperament, the temperature and everything that's going on the British streets at the moment when it comes to Israel and Gaza. So, yes, it's absolutely... you know, I don't want to say fantastic, but it's really, really good that the reaction was as prompt as it was. But the very fact that it was is also the flip side of that absolutely tragic. I cannot... I mean, that man... I mean, you've got a young child. You've got a young child as well. I cannot imagine taking your child and just when you say to him, what's your daughter going to be like? Well, she's kind of accepted that you've got layers of security when you're going into your school, that you're going to have... People should not live like that in this country. People should not have to be on high alert when they go to their place of worship, whatever that place for them is. I mean, this is sickening.
It's not new. You know, I'm from Bournemouth. I was born in Bournemouth, and there's a very large Jewish community in Bournemouth. And even when I was a kid, I had many Jewish friends at my school. There was armed security on holy days. There were security guards every Sabbath. In 2008, a man in London tried to break into a Jewish school with a machete. So, I mean, I'm not diminishing that. It is disgusting, but it's also it's been a mainstay of life for British Jews for decades.
It should never have been.
Of course, of course not.
It should never have been.
Of course, you're right. It isn't brand new, but since October the 7th, 2023, when the horrific events took place in Israel, it is now at a historic high that there have been attacks of an anti-Semitic nature on Jewish people. And between January and June, there were over 1,500 incidents of anti-Semitism, but anywhere from verbal attacks to physical to serious assaults, vandalism of Jewish property and so on. It is at unprecedented levels, and it has been exacerbated since October the 7th. And I think one of the things that is so genuinely worrying about this is that 48% of our Jewish population say they do not feel welcome in our country. We were a place of refuge for displaced Jews after and during the awful events of the 20th century in Europe. We gave them safety, we welcomed them, we welcomed the children, and now they cannot feel safe or welcome here. That is a horrific reflection on what has happened in our country, that we cannot allow them to feel this is their home. And Keir Starmer can say that all he likes, but the facts don't bear it up. The attacks are taking place. They do not feel like this is a safe country to live in. Over a quarter don't see their future remaining here. I think we really need to step up, that this rhetoric of conflating Israeli politics with being Jewish is unforgivable.
I couldn't agree more with that final sentiment. I couldn't agree more with it. It is outrageous, and the British Jews have been central to this country's life for centuries. You know, we had a British Jewish Prime Minister, Benjamin Disraeli, also a novelist. You know, one of the most important people in the conservative tradition in this country. You can go back further. So I couldn't agree more heartily with that. I'd also add that, you know, Keir Starmer, he's the Prime Minister. They're always going to get things in the neck. But this has been an issue, you're right to say, since 2023, this has been an issue, you know, for, I would say, 10, 15 years. It's clearly been on the rise, more gently. And I'd also say, look, I'm very reticent to talk about motivations because we don't actually know that much about the assailant. That said...
No, but hold on a minute.
No.
I am going to be a very responsible individual, so I'm not going to sit here, indulge in wild conspiracy theories, but you don't need to be the brain of Britain to be able to look at the picture that is unfolding on the streets of Britain.
I agree.
And to look at the guy that did this, look at the stuff that the fella had strapped round his own waist. You can kind of put two and two together. This is not rocket science.
I was just trying to give a caveat. I wasn't going to say we have no idea. We can make rational inferences. You're quite right. But what I want to say is that this is not just a racist, anti-Semitic attack, which it is. It also seems to be a political attack. It also seems to be an instance of political violence. And we really need to get on top of this. Today we're talking about British Jews and their safety, and that's a longer-term thing, and we need to absolutely centre that today. But
is it political violence or is it racism? Because there are people listening to you listening to
both. If you think it's connected to Israel, then it is political. Of course it's political violence, if you think that.
So what do you think to this at home, ladies and gents? Because I'm trying to unpick, and of course, many of the details will emerge as, the coming hours progress and all the rest of it. We already know that 2 people have been arrested in relation to this. So we're going to get many more details as everything kind of goes across. Live scenes now, what you're looking at there, that is Andy Burnham is about to arrive any moment now in Manchester. And, of course, if he starts speaking, I shall cross live back over to that. But, yeah, you can probably see if you're thinking, Michelle, what's going on with that camera? Everyone's just trying to get into position. This is the way it works on live telly, ladies and gents. Everything moves very, very quickly. So when Andy Burnham, if he does start speaking, I will cross live there back to you as well. What do you think to this, ladies and gents at home? I'm getting such a big reaction. How do I put this kindly? There's not a lot of love coming through for Keir Starmer. In fact, actually, there's quite a lot of fury that's coming through on the inbox and on some of the ways that you're contacting me. The guest that I just had there, the local resident there, the Jewish father as well, he was saying he doesn't really have much time for the reaction of the government. And I've got to say, a lot of that is coming through from you guys at home as well. There's a sense that, this is a little bit too little, too late. There's a sense I'm hearing that many of you are saying you're talking now about keeping Jewish people safe on the streets of Britain, but lots of you are getting in touch saying, Michelle, have you seen the streets of Britain and how unsafe they've felt for so many Jewish people for a long time now? Adam, the guest that I had earlier on, he was referencing what he called hate marches. Obviously, the pro-Palestinian marches that take place every single weekend there or thereabouts. Do you think they play a role in anti-Jewish hatred?
Well, do they play a role is a very ambiguous question. I think you have to have real latitude with regards to freedom of expression and freedom of protest, and the minute you have assault on the person, vandalism, any kind of escalation with regards to violence, you need to come down on them like a ton of bricks. And I almost think focusing on tweets and what people might, on a placard within reason, I'm not talking about incitement or, a prescribed terrorist organisation or something like that. I almost feel like the focus on that stuff actually undermines the real challenge, which is that if somebody vandalises a synagogue, they should be found very quickly and they should be punished very quickly. We need to give the resources to law enforcement to do that. We presently don't. We have a police force in many regards which is AWOL. Yeah. And that's true here. So I don't think it's about what... we can talk about the relationship, sure, but I think there is a substantial problem with regards to violence, vandalism, criminal behaviour, which is going unpunished a lot of the time.
Let me just show you the streets of London. I think this was as recent as last night, ladies and gents. Watch. The radio, you can probably guess what that was. There's lots of kind of firework flare things. There's lots of Palestinian flags. There's lots of drums. There's lots of shouting. There's lots of chanting. I am not Jewish, but if I was, I probably would find those scenes quite intimidating. And Anziasi, your thoughts?
I absolutely agree. And actually, I think I find them quite intimidating despite not being Jewish. That it is not our culture to have fireworks going off with people right next to them and no distance or safety precautions. We're not used to that type of demonstration, and I don't think it has a place. I think peaceful, respectful demonstrations should absolutely be allowed, but I don't actually see any argument for why they have to be allowed every single week. Aaron, you mentioned that it might be political, that there is probably a political connection and with Israel. Well, I agree. And the Israeli foreign minister has absolutely laid the blame at Starmer's feet for failing to take the necessary action to curb this toxic wave of anti-Semitism and having effectively allowed it to persist. The truth must be told. Blatant and rampant anti-Semitism and the anti-Israeli incitement, as well as calls for the support of terror, have recently become a widespread phenomenon in the streets of London, in cities across Britain, and on its campuses. That is a hugely damaging reputation for this country to have, not only for our Jewish people, but for every single person who lives here.
But hold on,
the fact we are allowing terrorism, rewarding terrorism.
Hold on, we were saying a minute ago that if you conflate Jewish people with Israel, that's anti-Semitic, and now we're allowing the Israeli Foreign Minister to conflate British Jews, who are British, with Israelis.
Because they
or
are
the Israeli government, actually.
They are being attacked because the perpetrators conflate it with Israel.
I agree, that's anti-Semitic.
Absolutely,
but now we're saying that when the Foreign Minister does the same thing, that's...
He is pointing out a fact. He is pointing out that
British Jews are not responsible for...
No, they're not. And he's not saying they are. He's saying that the people who have conflated the two together...
Read what he said. That's
exactly what he said.
No, he said there was anti-Semitism absolutely on the rise. We all agree with that. And by the way, some people don't agree with that. And he was saying anti-Semitism and anti-Israel sentiment. Israel, like any other country...
That's not saying that they are the same thing. It's saying that there are perpetrators who believe they're the same thing.
I mean, this is really...
And that is the worrying thing, that by giving carte blanche to these violent demonstrations, many of them have had real problems. People have been arrested. There has been clear incitement to violence and to hatred in those marches. By allowing that to persist so often, so day in, so day out, without any retribution, without any punishment for those people, it has become endemic, and that has put Jewish people's lives at risk.
Let me speak to someone, a Jewish member of the community that many of my viewers and listeners might already be familiar with. He's a former editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Jake Wallace Simmons. Good evening to you, Jake.
Good evening.
I mean, terrible day today for your community. And, of course, I echo what I said to my previous guest. Of course, all of our thoughts are with you, your broader community. Absolutely appalling scenes that we've seen. The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has just addressed, in particular, your community, saying that he doesn't want you to have fear as you go about your business, that hatred won't be tolerated within the streets of Britain. What's your response to him?
I feel nothing but contempt for the Prime Minister, frankly. Last week, he was being congratulated by Hamas. This week, he's lamenting a Hamas-style attack in Manchester. He deserves nothing but contempt. He has presided over a government that increasingly has been hostile to Israel just when Israel is battling for its life and needs our support. His recognition of a Palestinian state placed no demands on the Palestinians at all, not for Hamas to lay down its arms, not for Hamas even to release the hostages, but just gave them a state regardless. Jews feel abandoned by him, abandoned by this government, and abandoned by pretty much every politician on the left that sheds crocodile tears today while spreading anti-Semitic bile month after month over the last couple of years.
But, I mean, why do you think, are you suggesting that Keir Starmer doesn't understand the sentiment and the feeling of British Jews? Do you think that he understands and doesn't care? What do you think is driving this?
Well, it's impossible to look into Keir Starmer's soul, if indeed he has a soul, and to divine exactly where this hypocrisy is coming from. But he does tend to have a modus operandi where he throws the Jews rhetorical crumbs while advancing policies that are contrary to Jewish interests and indeed security. His indulgence of this anti-Semitic rhetoric, which has criticised Israel far more than Hamas. I mean, Hamas is the jihadi group that started this war, that committed the atrocities, and Israel is trying to protect its people and get its hostages home as best it can. Hamas is playing the game of human sacrifice, if I can call it a depraved game. Israel is trying to protect life as best it can while still winning the war. Keir Starmer's been buying their propaganda, spreading it, condemning Israel, not condemning Hamas anywhere near as much, and whipping up people's emotions against Israel, against our natural ally in democracy, as it seeks to defend its people. Shame on him.
But then, I mean, the issue of, foreign conflicts take place, unfortunately, right across the world. This conflict between Israel and Gaza, it's captured the imagination of people in a way that I would say that most other conflicts, unfortunately, do not. You have scores of people now, millions of people in this country. They will be watching this and they'll be shouting at their screen, but Israel are killing babies. They will be shouting at their screen that people are being tortured in Gaza. They see images on their social media feeds, then bombarded with messaging about awful, inhumane, horrendous acts. They then take to the streets because they will say, we don't want children to die, we don't want children to be maimed, we don't want these horrendous acts, we just want it all to stop. But what's happened is that now this has also become, yes, absolute sentiment for innocent children, but then also it's manifested into an intense dislike of the Israeli government. Many people would say, you know, they're not attending hate marches, they're attending marches to protect babies and children. What would you say back to that?
Well, I think the two words that you're missing from that monologue is propaganda and incitement. It's interesting that you mentioned the pictures. What we're looking at is a war with two sides, a jihadi side that's hiding behind civilians and trying to get death for propaganda purposes, and a democratic army that's doing its best to get its people back and defend its country. That's what's going on. Of course you have civilian casualties in war. Regrettably and tragically, that accompanies every single war. That's why we try not to start them unless you're Hamas. Israel's doing its best, but you mentioned the pictures. We are subjected to waves of pictures only of those civilian casualties. It's almost as if this war has no combatants on the other side. It's just Israel against the civilians. That's the effect that Hamas is trying to produce by spreading only pictures of civilian casualties and prohibiting us from seeing any images of Hamas fighters being killed or wounded. Ask yourself the last time you saw a picture of a Hamas fighter killed or wounded on the mainstream media. You never see it because Hamas doesn't allow it out. This is propaganda. It's changing hearts and minds around the world. People thinking that Israel are killing children willfully and intentionally. They are absolutely not. They are trying to protect civilian life while targeting Hamas in very, very difficult circumstances. It's propaganda. It's incitement. The media plays a role. The UN plays a big role in their fabrications of genocide and famine, which are obviously ridiculous if you look at the nature of the report and the fabrications contained therein. We're facing propaganda that now, sadly, appears to have deadly results, not just in Israel and elsewhere in America, but now on the streets of Manchester as well.
And bringing it back to the streets of Manchester then, I mean, you heard our Prime Minister talking about increased security and things like that to help the Jewish community. Will that help the Jewish community?
Well, look, I'd rather have increased security than decreased security, that's for certain. The Jews, living as a Jew in London, when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, I was in an Orthodox Jewish community. I went to a Jewish school, went to synagogue, obviously, Jewish community centres, bakeries and so on. Security was part of our lives, and not just security, but also threat. We had regular bomb threats, maybe not, once or twice a year, no more than that, don't want to exaggerate, but, we were evacuated from school on a fairly regular basis to a safe place in a nearby old age home. We had thugs turning up, trying to beat us up. I remember our physics teacher, Mr. Paget, grabbing a couple of people he used to be a policeman, grabbing a couple of interlopers and marching them out on a couple of occasions. That's how we lived, and it's only got worse since. And whenever Israel goes to war to defend its people against a jihadi enemy, there's always a spike in anti-Semitism, there's always the media propaganda, there's always the UN, there's always the usual suspects whipping up incitement against Israel and against Jews. We're seeing it now at a fever pitch after 2 years of the deadliest war Israel's ever experienced, the longest lasting war it's ever fought. And people like, our political elites are dignifying that rhetoric by, as I say, spending all of their energy condemning Israel, which should be our natural ally, and barely any of it condemning Hamas. And as a result, we see, unfortunately, the tragic results of the attacks today.
Just a very quick answer to this next question, because we're just about to hear from the Home Secretary and Andy Burnham. You can see them live arriving on the screen. These pro-Palestinian marches, do you think they should be banned? Just a very quick yes or no, because I have to go and listen to the Home Secretary.
Those Palestinian marches are organised by people with strong links to Hamas.
I need to cut and go to the Home Secretary. Apologies.
Synagogue on the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. My prayers are with the victims and the families of all of those who are murdered here today. I want to thank the police and all of the emergency services for the speed of their response and also for their considerable bravery. The government has stepped up security at synagogues across the whole of the country, and we will do whatever is required to keep our Jewish community safe. I know that there are many questions that are still to be answered, and rest assured they will be answered as quickly as possible. It will just take a little time for us to establish exactly what has happened here, but we will share more information as soon as we are able to. What I do want to say is, to those who seek to divide us, they will fail. Thank you.
On behalf of everybody in Greater Manchester, I would like to thank the Home Secretary for coming here immediately today to provide reassurance to our communities and, of course, support to Greater Manchester Police. To the Chief Constable and all of his staff, we would want to say we can't thank them enough for being on the scene within minutes. Our firefighters from Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service also provided emergency care at the scene, and of course staff from MWAS, North West Ambulance Service. This was an exemplary blue light response. They were supported by volunteers on the scene from the Community Security Trust, and it's an organisation that we owe a huge debt of thanks to, that works to keep our communities safe. Tonight our first thoughts are with the families of those people who died, those injured and those traumatised by this and horrific anti-Semitic attack on our Jewish friends and neighbours. We condemn it outright. Greater Manchester will never stand aside when one of our communities is attacked. We ask everyone to show solidarity to the Jewish community this weekend, and already we've mobilised through our interfaith network messages of support and solidarity through places of worship. We always will stand together here in Greater Manchester, and we will never let acts that are designed to cause hatred, division in our communities, violence, we will never let them succeed. And that's our message tonight to everybody across Greater Manchester. Do not let them succeed. Respond by reaching out, by redoubling efforts to work together and stand together in these difficult times.
Tonight across Manchester, residents are horrified by the anti-Semitic terrorist attack that we've witnessed on our streets here in Crumpsall. Echoing the words of the Home Secretary and the Mayor, our thoughts are with those who have lost their lives, their families, their loved ones, those that are injured and everyone that's been affected. We know that this will leave a deep mark on our community here in Manchester, as Jewish people were attacked on their holiest day as they went to worship. But know this, in Manchester we will stand with and support our Jewish friends, our Jewish community, our neighbours, fellow residents. We'll stand together, wrapping our arms around them with the love and the support that they need. And we'll work with agencies to make sure right across the city, everyone in our city feels safe. Tonight is a difficult moment of sadness and reflection, but I know that Manchester will come together. They'll show the unity that we're proud of, and they'll stand with in declaring that hate has no place in our city, and that Manchester is a city we can all be proud of, and a city that will show the love and the support to our Jewish friends that they need in this time of moment of darkness. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
There you go. That was, of course, Shabana Mahmood, our Home Secretary, and Andy Burnham as well, speaking out there live at the scene of that horrendous terror attack that we have witnessed this morning. Bill, one of my viewers, has got in touch saying, Michelle, I'm watching your programme and I have an overwhelming feeling, he says, yet more politicians turning up at yet more scenes of horrendous terror attacks, yet more harsh words, yet nothing, he suggests, seems to change. What do you think to what Bill has to say? Is that a sentiment that you are feeling at home? I mean, it's a horrendous day, and not just for the Jewish community, but of course for broader, well, for the whole community, for all of us in Britain. Every single one of us are touched by this tonight. I've had so many people get in touch telling me, you're Jewish, you feel unsafe. I've got people saying you're not Jewish and you feel unsafe. If you are just tuning in, I just want to take a moment to take you back to what happened this morning on the streets of Crumpsall in Manchester. This is just after the events had unfolded.
They've killed him. No, oh, hell, they're just
everybody else, get back! If you're not involved, move back! Get away! Somebody stay with casualties! Everybody else, he has a bomb! Go away!
He's got a bomb on him! He's got a bomb! Mate, he's got a bomb! Man, he's got a bomb on his jacket, mate! He's trying to go in his... Now! He's got bombs on him!
So an anti-Semitic terror attack that took place this morning around 9:30. Yom Kippur, of course, one of the holiest days of the Jewish calendar. You've seen 2 innocent people killed, 4 people, innocent people, currently in hospital fighting for their lives, fighting for their health. Of course, all of our sentiments are with everybody affected by this today. We've had 2 arrests, and we know, apparently, the police know who the suspect is. He, of course, was shot dead very quickly indeed. I think it was 7 minutes after that first emergency call was put in. Joel, one of my viewers, has said, Michelle, I went to a Jewish primary school and a Jewish secondary school. He says, I just want to tell you that my schools have always needed full security, high fences, high gates, 24/7 security guards, motion centres. He tells me we've had constant lockdown drills. He says this has been going on for decades. When I saw the news this morning, the first thing I did, he said, is head straight to my synagogue to help out on security. This is what we do as a community. We come together. It is an incredibly scary day for us, he says, but unfortunately, it's something that we feel like we've been dealing with for years. What a way to live. What an awful, awful way to live. Aaron Bastani, some of your response to some of the things you've been hearing tonight.
Yeah, there was something about more words from politicians and yet nothing changes. I mean, it really is important to say that, you know, huge numbers of these kinds of attacks are foiled by the security services. They're foiled by the brave people that staff our security services, the police and so on. And I do think the fact that Greater Manchester Police responded as quickly as they did is something to do with the Manchester Arena attack. I think GMP are really on top of this in terms of anti-terror response, as is the London Met. Here's the problem, though. If an attack like this happens outside of Greater Manchester or London, we have a bit of an issue in terms of how quickly can the police respond. And that is, again, something which politicians can get on top of. I know it's easy to criticise politicians, but this kind of response needs to be the norm everywhere, and I suspect right now that is not the case.
Yeah, but how do we stop the need for it? Yeah. Because it's all well and good sitting here going, oh, yeah, high five emergency services who've responded quickly. How on earth do we get to the point where Jewish people in our society can go about their business? They're not asking for much. I want to go to prayer. I want my kids to be safe. I want to live and let live, and I just want to crack on with my life. How do we achieve that for them?
In regards to what? Are you talking about
We're in a situation now where so many Jewish people feel unsafe in society when they're just going about their daily business. You've just heard Jake Wallace-Simmons there. He was speaking very eloquently, very passionately. He feels very let down by the government. Lots of my viewers are getting in touch saying that they are Jewish, that they feel threatened, for example, by the pro-Palestinian marches. I've just shown you some protest footage from as recent as yesterday where you've got flares going off, you've got drums everywhere, you've got chants that are intimidating.
Some people some people feel threatened by the Tommy Robinson demonstrations. Should that be banned? By the way, I don't think it should be. Of course, it shouldn't be.
Just to be clear, there's not a Tommy Robinson march taking over central London every single week for years.
So it's about frequency.
Well, I'm not a Jewish person, so I'm not walking the streets feeling intimidated by what I'm seeing. But what I'm presenting to you is the viewpoint and the perspective that I'm getting very loudly from my inbox. Not just my inbox, my social media commentary, people that have been reflecting sentiments on here. They regard these things as hate marches. On the so-called Tommy Robinson rally, whatever you want to call it, protest rally, whatever you want to call it, that is a very infrequent demonstration. From what I saw, it's not calling for people to be killed or anything like that.
Well, the protest, the Gaza,
or anything like that.
The formal organisers of the Palestinian protests aren't doing that.
No, the formal organisers aren't. But there are Hamas flags. There are supporters of terrorist organisations.
Can I just please finish? At that Tommy Robinson protest, there was undercover work there.
You are conflating.
No, please let me finish. This is really important. No, please let me finish. There was undercover reporting of people at Tommy Robinson demo. It was a black person, mixed heritage man. He went as a white person, and he got people to say the most ghastly things to him. Now, in no way were the people saying those anti-black comments using the N-word, the P-word. In no way were those people reflective, in my view, of the vast majority of people on that demonstration. Of course they're not. So the idea that you get 200,000-300,000 people demonstrating in support of what's going on in Gaza. By the way, Gaza, surface area, less than the Isle of Wight, has been subject to more ordnance by weight than Dresden, Hamburg and London combined over the entirety of the Second World War.
So you think that those protests are not contributing to anti-Jew hate?
I'm not suggesting that. I'm saying the vast majority of those people are perfectly law-abiding and exercising their right to protest, as is Tommy Robinson, by the way.
They probably are, but they are giving cover to people who do support terrorist organisations.
So punish those
Hamas, and its founding articles, Article 7, Article 15, calls for the extermination of Jews. It is not a nice organisation.
But it's been prescribed in this country.
And it's on display in those marches. Some people have been arrested for it. Many of them have been let go. We all have seen the images. We all know that's true. And Jewish people see that and see it very understandably as a direct threat to their well-being in this country. And today, unfortunately, the terrorists got lucky. As Lady Thatcher said, when the IRA was so concerning in our country, the terrorists need to get lucky once. The security services need to be lucky every single day. But I think one of the really worrying things is the empty words of politicians. Everyone, particularly everyone in the Jewish community, but many of us outside of it, expected this to happen.
I've got to say, when I saw what unfolded, I was shocked, obviously, concerned, obviously, but unfortunately, I didn't feel surprised. I didn't. I know that's terrible, but I didn't. I felt that I was actually quite surprised that something like this hadn't actually occurred already. What do you think? Let me cross live to the Policing and Crime Advisor for Reform UK, Colin Sutton. Colin, good evening to you. Your reaction to what's unfolded today?
Well, I find myself agreeing increasingly with Aaron these days, which certainly on the policing, which I should find troubling us. I don't know if he's been looking at our homework, I don't know. But yeah, it's the policing response, the blue light response was amazing today. The Chief Constable, Sir Stephen Watson, wasn't he impressive? And he is an impressive Chief Constable, very confident, clear in command. But that's dealing with something that's happened that should never have happened. That's the fact of it. And we do see these empty words and gestures. You know, we see the Prime Minister flying back from Denmark, and it's the same every time. And nothing actually is done to stop this happening. Now, we don't know who this man is yet. And I think, by the way, there are probably good reasons for not releasing his name at this stage, because there is an ongoing investigation and we don't want to jeopardise that at all. But, you know, we've got a situation where we have a government which, in opposition, was referred to the Equalities and Human Rights Commission for anti-Semitism and let anti-Semitism run rampant in its ranks. Now in government, we have the Prime Minister, who has happily stood by while we have these hate marches on a weekly basis in our capital city, making people feel afraid. and then he gives succor to a terrorist group by recognising their state, wherever that might be, it's hardly any surprise that people feel empowered to do things like this. And I agree with you, Michelle. It was just a question of when rather than if. This was always going to happen. And let's see, was this individual or these individuals that have been arrested, were they on watch lists? Do we know about them? Is there more we can do in a preventive field to make sure that these things just don't happen? Because allowing them to happen infrequently, as thankfully they seem to be, and then saying the same things in the same platitudes and politicians clutching at their pearls is not actually keeping people safe.
Sutton, that is the Policing and Crime Advisor for Reform UK. Thank you very much for your time. The programme has flown by. We're only with you for another 5 minutes. So just closing thoughts with you, Annunziata. I mean, we've heard a lot now. We've heard from the Prime Minister. We've heard from the Home Secretary. We've heard from Andy Burnham. We've heard pretty much every politician today has popped up and said, I stand in solidarity with the Jewish people. The sense that I'm getting from the viewers that are contacting me, at least, they don't feel that people, the powers that be, are standing in solidarity with them. They don't feel that their safety can be protected going forward.
The Jewish population of this country is under 300,000. Manchester has around 40,000 Jewish people in its population of nearly 1 million. This is a very small community that is incredibly well integrated and part of our society. Many, as Aaron said, have been here for hundreds of years. We need to ensure their safety, to make sure that they actually feel the welcome the majority of Brits feel, and we have to therefore get rid of those who in any way condone getting rid of the Jewish population, and I'm afraid that means fully protecting them.
Aaron?
I think, I've mentioned political violence, and of course it's really key to say this is a racist, anti-Semitic attack, but there is clearly a rise in political violence. We saw the assassination, the murder of Charlie Kirk just a couple of weeks ago. And there is clearly now a turn in Western Europe, in the UK, in the United States, increasingly, I think this is indisputable personally, for people seeking to redress political grievances via violence, assassinations, terrorist attacks and so on. And I think that's clearly on the rise. And you're asking me what can be done about that. I do think it's now incumbent on the entire political class to act together to say we cannot indulge, and look, this does relate to protests of all kinds. We cannot indulge this tendency now of people thinking that violence or vandalism is an appropriate response to political grievances. People in a free society are allowed to have political grievances. People are allowed to criticise this country or Israel or whoever. But the minute that descends into criminality against people, against minorities, you have to come down it like a ton of bricks. You have to.
But do you think they will? Because it's all well and good saying, you've got to come down on that stuff like a ton of bricks. But really? Do you think people will?
Well, you're asking what they should do, and I'm saying that I think would be the beginning of a response. And I think that politicians of all stripes need to really address this issue of rising political violence. It's clearly a thing, not just in this country, by the way. It's clearly a thing. Richard
has just said, Michelle, I am watching everything unfold, and he says, all I can say is these are very depressing times that we are in. He wants to feel optimistic, he says, going forward, but he feels that he just can't see a way back to harmony. Isn't that tragic? Because I tell you what, Richard, there's a lot of other people that are getting in touch with me as well and saying that same thing, that you feel that there's now so much division within the streets of Britain that we can't come back from that. I've got to tell you, I refuse to believe that. I refuse to think that this is just how life will be in the UK, because it's got to be better. It has to be better. Do I have the answers as to how to achieve that? Unfortunately, not. All I can say is that we are going nowhere. We'll stay having these conversations together. if you are just tuning in, of course, I will be handing it over. It's almost 7 o'clock, so it is almost time to say a farewell. So thank you very much to my panel and to my guests tonight. I will end the show the way that I started the show, which is sending my love, my regards, my solidarity to everyone that's suffering because of that horrendous terror attack today. We know that 2 innocent people have lost